The Battle of Ain Jalut, 1260, when the Mamluks stopped the Mongol Empire. On September 3, 1260, in the green valleys of Galilee, the unstoppable Mongol war machine met a force unlike any they had ever faced before, the Mamluks of Egypt. At a place called Ain Jalut, the spring of Goliath, the world witnessed the unthinkable. The Mongols defeated in open battle. This confrontation did not only decide the fate of the Middle East, it reshaped global history. For the first time since the rise of Genghis Khan, a disciplined and determined Muslim army halted the westward expansion of the most feared empire of the medieval age. Background: the Mongol storm. By the mid-13th century, the Mongol Empire was the largest land empire the world had ever seen. From the steppes of Mongolia, it stretched across China, Persia, Central Asia, and deep into Eastern Europe. Under Genghis Khan and his successors, city after city fell. Entire civilizations were erased. The Mongols were fast, ruthless, and seemingly unstoppable. In 1258, the Mongols under Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, captured Baghdad, the heart of the Islamic world and the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate. The fall of Baghdad was catastrophic. The city was burned, hundreds of thousands were slaughtered, and Caliph al-Mustasim was executed in one of the most infamous massacres in world history. The Islamic world trembled. The Mongols now looked towards Syria and Egypt, the last great centers of Muslim power. Hulagu advanced westward, conquering Aleppo and Damascus. Most Muslim rulers, terrified by the Mongols' reputation, submitted without resistance. Yet one power stood firm: the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt. The Mamluks, slave soldiers who became kings. The Mamluks were no ordinary army. Originally slaves, bought as boys from the Turkic steppes and the Caucasus, they were trained in military arts and raised to serve as elite soldiers of the Ayyubid dynasty. Over time, they became so powerful that they overthrew their own masters and seized control of Egypt. By 1260, Egypt was ruled by Sultan Saif ad-Din Qutuz, a former Mamluk warrior known for his courage and intelligence. Beside him stood Baibars, a brilliant and ambitious general, a man whose strategic genius would soon change the course of history. The Mongol demand: submission or death. After capturing Damascus, Hulagu sent envoys to Cairo, demanding Egypt's surrender. The message was clear: submit or be destroyed. Qutuz's response shocked even his closest advisors. He executed the Mongol envoys, cut off their heads, and hung them on the gates of Cairo. In Mongol culture, killing envoys was an unforgivable act, a declaration of total war. By doing so, Qutuz made a choice. Egypt would not bow. It was a daring act of defiance, one that could either save or doom his entire nation.
The Mongols' retreat, a moment of opportunity. But fate intervened in a way Qutuz could not have predicted. While Hulagu was preparing to invade Egypt, word arrived from the east. Menka Khan, the great Khan of the Mongol Empire, had died. By Mongol custom, all royal princes had to return to Mongolia for the election of the next great Khan. Hulagu thus withdrew the majority of his army eastward, leaving behind a smaller force of around 10,000 troops under the command of General Kitbuqa, a fierce and loyal Nestorian Christian warrior. This was Qutuz's chance. He knew the Mongol army was divided and vulnerable. If Egypt waited, Hulagu would return with an even greater force. The only way to survive was to strike first. The march to Palestine. In the summer of 1260, Sultan Qutuz gathered around 20,000 Mamluk cavalry, Egypt's finest warriors, and marched north toward Palestine. Along the way, he was joined by Syrian and Ayyubid contingents eager for revenge against the Mongols. The army moved swiftly through Sinai and crossed into the fertile plains of Galilee. Baibars, who knew the region well, suggested a battlefield, Ain Jalut, a narrow valley surrounded by hills and forests. The terrain was perfect for an ambush, and Baibars had a plan that would turn the Mongols' own tactics against them. The battle begins. The trap is set. On September 3rd, 1260, as dawn broke over the valley of Ain Jalut, Kitbuqa's Mongol army encountered the forward elements of the Mamluk forces. The Mongols attacked with their usual ferocity, horse archers galloping in loose formation, firing volleys of arrows before wheeling away. Baibars' vanguard engaged briefly, then began to retreat in apparent panic, feigning a disorderly withdrawal. It was a trick, one the Mongols themselves had perfected. But now, for the first time, someone had learned to use it against them. Believing the Mamluks were breaking, Kitbuqa ordered a full pursuit. The Mongol cavalry surged forward into the valley, unaware that they were riding straight into a trap. The Mamluk counterattack. The moment the Mongols entered the narrow valley, Baibars gave the signal. Trumpets blared, drums thundered, and from behind the hills, thousands of Mamluk cavalry charged down from both sides, encircling the Mongols in a deadly pincer movement. The Mongols, caught off guard and unable to maneuver in the confined space, found themselves trapped. Their horses stumbled over uneven ground, arrows rained down from all directions. For the first time in decades, the fearsome Mongol cavalry, the terror of Asia and Europe, began to falter. In the thick of the battle, Sultan Qutuz is said to have thrown off his helmet, raised his sword, and cried out, "O Muslims, fight for Islam!" His shout inspired his soldiers. The Mamluks pressed their attack with renewed fury, striking the enemy's center. After hours of brutal fighting, Kitbuqa's army broke. The Mongol general himself was captured and executed on the battlefield, avenging the massacres of Baghdad and Damascus.
The defeat of the Mongols. By sunset, the plain of Ain Jalut was littered with Mongol corpses. The few survivors fled north towards Syria, their power shattered. For the first time in history, the Mongol Empire, the empire that had crushed Persia, China, and Russia, had been defeated in open battle. The news spread like wildfire across the Islamic world. From Cairo to Damascus, from Mecca to the ruins of Baghdad, the people celebrated. Ain Jalut was not merely a military victory. It was a spiritual rebirth, a sign that the Muslim world still had the strength to resist. Aftermath, triumph, and betrayal. Sultan Qutuz returned to Egypt as a hero, hailed as the savior of Islam. But his triumph was short-lived. On the journey back to Cairo, he was assassinated, most likely by his own general, Baibars, who seized power and crowned himself sultan. Under Baibars' rule, the Mamluk Sultanate became one of the strongest states in the medieval Islamic world. He rebuilt the fortresses of Syria, repelled further Mongol incursions, and turned Egypt into the cultural and military heart of the Middle East. Tactical and strategic significance. The Battle of Ain Jalut remains a masterclass in military strategy. 3 key lessons stand out. 1. Adaptation of enemy tactics. The Mamluks turned the Mongols' own feigned retreat strategy against them. 2. Use of terrain. Baibars exploited the narrow valley to neutralize the Mongols' mobility advantage. 3. Morale and leadership. Qutuz's personal bravery and Baibars' discipline kept the army unified under pressure.
The Mamluks also benefited from similar weaponry and training. Both sides relied heavily on horse archers, but the Mamluks' superior coordination and knowledge of local geography proved decisive.
The spiritual dimension. In Islamic tradition, Ain Jalut holds deep symbolic meaning. The name itself, Spring of Goliath, recalls the Quranic story of David, or Dawood, defeating the giant Goliath, or Jalut, with faith and courage. Just as David overcame a seemingly invincible enemy, so too did the Mamluks defeat the Mongols through belief, strategy, and unity. For many scholars of the time, Ain Jalut was seen as divine intervention, a reminder that God had not abandoned the Muslim world after the fall of Baghdad. A turning point in world history. The consequences of Ain Jalut were profound. The Mongol advance into the Middle East was permanently halted. Egypt and the holy cities of Mecca and Medina were spared from destruction. Had the Mamluks fallen, the Mongols might have conquered all of North Africa and possibly launched campaigns into southern Europe. Instead, the defeat at Ain Jalut marked the beginning of Mongol decline in the West and the rise of the Mamluk Sultanate as a major power. Under Baibars and his successors, the Mamluks would dominate the Middle East for the next 2 centuries, defending the region against both Mongols and Crusaders alike. Legacy. The day the Mongols were stopped. Ain Jalut is often compared to other pivotal battles like Tours 732 and Hattin 1187, moments when the tide of history turned in a single day. It proved that even the mightiest empire could be stopped when faced with discipline, courage, and brilliant leadership. The Mamluks' victory preserved not only Egypt, but the continuity of Islamic civilization itself. In the centuries that followed, Cairo would emerge as a center of art, learning, and trade, a legacy that might never have existed had Ain Jalut ended differently. Epilogue. The Eye of Goliath. Today, the site of Ain Jalut lies quietly in northern Israel near the modern town of Ain Harod. The landscape is serene, with no trace of the chaos that once erupted there. Yet for historians, Ain Jalut remains one of the most significant battles in world history, the day the Mongol tide met its first real resistance, and the world learned that even giants can fall. The Eye of Goliath became the place where an empire met its match, and where faith, strategy, and unity changed the course of history forever.